So what I'm trying to say is I don't think of mandatorium because mandatorium leads to bans, leads to a lot of other things.
understand what we're letting ourselves in for should a data center be approved in the future. And I'll say more about this in a minute. Like everyday people across the country, we know that data centers bring with them risks and dangers. They include draining local utility and water grids, air pollution, relentless noise, increased power bills, and false promises of steady jobs. We live in a water-stressed region already, where additional stresses like these run counter to quality of life goals for many of us. Data center construction is not a political right versus left matter. For me, it's about the ultra-wealthy corporate few exploiting the rest of us, using us as cash machines. There's nothing democratic about this data center boom. No one called me to ask if I'm okay with wealthy corporations rolling out all this AI stuff. There was no referendum in our state where I could weigh in. It reminded me of how thoroughly the gambling industry rooted into our state. Many working folks across the country argue that it's the failure of our democratic institutions that elected officials don't genuinely listen to us. And I know this won't be the case here in Alamance. When I look up from the shovel for a minute these days and try and get a sense of why such an issue is before us, it becomes clear that we live within an economy built on unrelenting growth, 3% a year, every year, and that projects like data centers generate wealth for those in charge at the expense of everyday people. Commissioners, please do consider convening a citizens working group on this big issue. We'll do our work, study the issue from all angles, and forward to you our findings so that you can include them in your deliberations.
Ramona Allen.
It is quite evident that we need a moratorium. I'm listening to everybody's point of views or lack of knowledge. My knowledge of data centers, AI of course, just getting into understanding about the pros and cons. So that lets us know that there are still things that we don't know, that we need to step back, reevaluate, and decide, is this something that we need? Is that something that we have the capacity for? We're growing at a rate that we don't even know from day to day because of the population and whatnot. So it's important that we step back and we reevaluate. And for those that don't know, get a chance to weigh in to say what they think needs to be done in our county. Also with not having zoning, we're opening ourselves up for so much, because if we don't have that, you're gonna have someone that comes in, and if they check those boxes, they're gonna be able to come in and get exactly what they want. So it's important that we reevaluate and take in consideration everything that everyone says tonight. And I think it's gonna take not an overnight decision. I think we need to at least 2 years to sit back and reevaluate and do some more looking over these things that have been brought forth tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The finger snapping needs to stop also. That's the same as clapping or calling out. Rick Thomas.
Good evening.
Correcting.
I've been a resident of North Carolina for about 12 years and have been a software engineer for about 14 years, including currently. Use AI regularly through my work. A lot of people have talked about so far about sustainable ways that the data centers can operate, and that tenants of data centers are looking into sustainable ways of operating. But there's a lot that we don't know yet. There's a 2024 report by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory estimates that data centers directly consumed 17 billion gallons of water for cooling in 2023. The number despite all the talk about more sustainable cooling, is expected to quadruple by 2028. 17 billion gallons of water is about, 160,000 households using a year, which is more than double the roughly 74,000 households in Alamance County. A June 2026 Guardian analysis found that 2/3 of the data centers currently planned across the U.S. are slated for areas that experienced drought in the past year. As we know, we are still in a drought in North Carolina. As of last week, according to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln National Drought Migration Center, 97% of Alamance County was considered to be in a moderate drought as of this past week. There's a lot of talk about power consumption. As someone who has been in front of a computer since I could read and works in the industry, there is a large difference in the demands between your standard data center and a hyperscale AI data center. As the gentleman earlier noted, the typical demand for a standard data center is about 10 to 30 megawatts. AI hyperscale data centers are designed to use anywhere between 100 megawatts upwards of 1 gigawatt. So, exponential difference. And then there is also the societal impact of AI usage. There's a 2025 study by the MIT Media Lab that did show that while LLM usage reduced friction in answering questions, it, quote, came at a cognitive cost, diminishing users' inclination to critically evaluate the LLM's output. And they did suggest that there needs to be additional longitudinal studies to understand the long-term cognitive effects. That goes back to my earlier point that there's a lot that could be and a lot that's under development, but there's a lot that we do not understand yet. I also support a longer term, a 2-year moratorium on any data center development. And I think, I think we just need to understand and have regulations in place when these companies come in and make sure that we're able to enforce them. Thank you.
Thank you. Percy M.
I'm last on the lane, so I wasn't sure if I'd make it. I'm Percy of Burlington, North Carolina. Originally, I was going to try to read off the declaration, but I hope everyone knows that. But the thing is as mentioned, about the unique history for Alamance. In 1757, North Carolina separated from South Carolina because of land issues of how it was treated. But I know after the American Civil War, Alamance would separate from Orange County for similar issues. And there is a lot of textile, a lot of industries that has came through Alamance. And the thing is that what sustained it the most has been agriculture. Agriculture has been not just in the land taxes, but in supplying food and supplying a lot of things, as well as tax other than for the land. The thing is, I'm hoping would be considered for all of this is, as mentioned of water, is the impact of I'm not going to get into about data centers, but what it will be the impact to our natural wildlife, our farmland, and all that already sustains Alamance County specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan Humphreys.
Evening, Commissioners. My name is Nathan Humphreys. I live in Burlington. Previously volunteered for the Burlington Traffic Commission. Have worked in IT for a very long time, probably going on a couple of decades now. Worked in a couple small data centers. Tonight, I'm asking you to move forward with a data center moratorium of at least 2 years. Here's why. Outside of recent rain, we've had periods of exceptional drought, and North Carolina has no state water withdrawal permitting program. Yet large data centers can use millions of gallons a day. We also have no zoning rules for these facilities outside our cities and towns, no noise buffers, no setbacks, no limits on backup generators. And nationally, ordinary ratepayers are already covering billions in grid upgrades built for data centers. More than 24 North Carolina jurisdictions, including Surrey County, have already paused approvals for exactly these reasons. And I'm sure you'll have seen the recent news regarding the entire state of Texas, where they put a pause because the data centers were going to require close to 5 times the capacity that the state had. Moratorium doesn't ban data centers, it buys time to write standards that should already exist. When staff drafts that ordinance, I'm asking for 3 non-negotiables. 1, real distance from homes, no zoning next to residential neighborhoods. 2, independent power and water. Any facility should bring its own generation and its own water supply, not drawn down from what our residents depend on. And 3, a real jobs guarantee. If incentives are tied to promised jobs, back that promise with a clawback provision or job guarantee escrow so the money returns to the county if those jobs don't show up. Please direct staff to draft an ordinance with at least a 2-year term, including these 3 protections. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Nathan, what did you say? North Carolina has no state water withdrawal? What did you say? I got most of it. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Kelly.
No state water withdrawal permitting program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now before we go to the consent agenda, the commissioners can make comments if they like. Commissioner Priola? On this one? Oh, sorry. Didn't see it on the back. Drew Benton?
Good evening. I don't have a speech prepared or anything. My name is Drew Benton. I live in Haw River, and I also work at the airport. Sure, you guys have been out to my facility. I think we have enough building going on in Alamance County. I think we have enough data already, and I don't think we need any more. Thank you.
Thank you. You're the best one on there. Emily Conway?
Priceless. That's the way to do it.
Emily Conway, I'm from Altamaha. I agree, we need at least a 2-year moratorium to do the research, draft correct policies. I think that it's really disappointing for the commissioners to tell the planning committee that any zoning proposals that will be seen before the election will be rejected and that they need to wait until after the election. But mostly, I wanted to talk to everybody in the room about the library committee, because the way the libraries work in Alamance County is that there are 3 cities that pay for the buildings, and the county funds the staff and everything else. In 1992, there was an ordinance that was passed to allow the cities to have a voice on the committee that is appointed by this board. The cities nominate their appointees, and the county commissioners review them, select their selections from those nominations. That's how that committee is filled. That's been the way it's been since 1992. In 2025, this committee has done a very direct reversal of that policy. They have stopped respecting the nominations from the cities and have been cherry picking their own committee members to support their own ideologies and not the voice of the county, the cities in this county. And I think that it's time, if that's the way, if it's legal, it's certainly not ethical or moral to do it that way. And if that's what the ordinance says and allows, we need a new ordinance. So, thank you.
Thank you. I need commissioners, did you have anything you wanted to say? Commissioner Priola?
I mean,
I'm sorry? Yeah, but did you sign up about data centers? Okay, well, you'll be on this sheet, and that'll be the public hearing. You're not on the regular sign-up sheet. I called everybody. Yes, sir, if your name's on the data, I'll call you. I'm sorry, ma'am. That's all right. Commissioner Priola?
I'm not sure whether we're supposed to talk about data or what else we're supposed to talk about. I just make a quick brief point about data centers. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of new information. Data centers provide a lot of good things, and they've been ham-handed, put together in places around the country that we need to be cognizant of here in Alamance County. So what's right for Alamance County is what we need to have a moratorium. It's prudent, whatever side of the question you fall with data centers. The benefits of data centers are what's right here in your palm. It's when you go to the hospital and they can treat you for cancer. That's what data centers are about. And like Mr. Cortese had pointed out, we've got thousands of new laptops for the kids. Where do you think that information is stored? So it's prudent to study both sides of this issue. I think a prudent period of time, put the experts together and come back with a report, then we can make a decision about how to move forward. With regard to the libraries, in my opinion, have been terribly mismanaged in this community. Yeah, you can bring it on, bring it on. I'm okay with that. So let's investigate what's happened with the ideological proceedings in the library system. We'll talk about that in coming. That's right, yeah. You
There'll
don't
be
have to
order.
like it. That's my opinion and my privilege.
We're gonna have order, or people are gonna be asked to leave.
I'd like to continue.
Can you do it nicely?
No?
That's, okay. You
Yeah,
got,
we'll talk about the libraries a little bit in the sessions to come. With the ideological lean that's gone on in this library system, I agree, there's some reforms that need to take place. End of comment.
Commissioner Carter?
Okay. Well, definitely with the data center issue, we'll probably be seeing some more after this is all over.
You can't hear your mic.
Sorry. So definitely with the data center issue, there's more to be said, but there's so much to be reviewed. I mean, we've all been spending an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out more and what we can do with data centers and what we can't do with data centers. We want to control them to the benefit of our citizens and the protection of our citizens. That's going to be our goal. That will be my goal, I'll guarantee it. There's been some comments made that followed a meeting of the planning board last month to the effect that this board asked for no decisions on zoning to be made until after the election. That's totally bogus. I have not supported zoning for a long time because of most of the constituents that have come to me, actually all the constituents up until recently, that have come to me have been opposed to zoning in Alamance County. I don't know if that's gonna change or not, but right now, we don't know how we're gonna vote. A lot of people think we know how we're gonna go vote weeks before we come into one of these meetings. Sometimes that decision on a vote is made while we're sitting at this table. So when somebody says, I know how you're gonna vote on something, that's bogus. You don't know how I'm gonna vote on something. I've had candidates say the same thing, accuse me of having a decision in way ahead of the point in time when that decision's gonna be made. That's not factual, that's not reality. We live and work in reality on this board. Alamance County is our reality. We try to take care of our citizens. That's my reality. My commitment is to take care of our citizens in Alamance County, and I'm gonna do my level best to do that. Now, we've got to make some decisions here tonight, primarily on whether or not we're gonna have a moratorium. I don't think anybody thinks we don't wanna have one. But we've got to decide how long and what happens at the end of it. if we're gonna have one. So, we don't make those decisions. We listen to our citizens. That's our job. That's my job, and I take it seriously. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. So tonight, we're here primarily to look at another zoning issue. And really, it goes beyond zoning to whether we want data centers to be put here in Alamance County. And of course, with the commissioners, we're looking at the unincorporated areas of the county. I think if you look across North Carolina, you'll find there's over 100 data centers in the state already. They're in Virginia and Georgia, South Carolina, all around. So they're here to be with us. And as we continue to become a society that's around, everything revolves around computers, data collection, and all of that. This need is not going to be diminished or go away, but we need to have that controlled. And so I look forward to your comments tonight. I think most of us have thought about a moratorium and probably would be willing to consider that. So tonight is a very important meeting for us as we go through trying to determine what are the issues that we want to address with that. So thank you for coming tonight, and I look forward to the comments that are going to be made.
Commissioner Thompson?
Well, I've pushed for this meeting because, so many times we've had things that have happened that we found out after the ground was broke. And with the way our policies are set up with no concrete type of zoning in the rural communities, it seems like it's over. And I don't want that to keep happening because people live in those areas and it's very destructive, it changes everything, and you feel like nobody's listening to you. And so I'll just put it out there, I don't care for data centers. You can have them in Loudoun County all you want to, along with that crazy school system they got going on. And so that's just my opinion. 2 years is fine with me or more. I'm just not for them. But as far as the library, there was a comment. I said something to somebody the other day. I said, the cities provide the buildings and the maintenance. We provide the staff and the other stuff. Friends of Libraries do book sales and do all kind of programs. If you're watching the libraries on Facebook, they have just blowed it wide open with stuff for kids all summer long. And I requested at the last meeting that we look at our policy, which is as old as my son. He's 29. And I think we need to look at that because I see big collaborations with Burlington, Graham, and Mebane. And that needs to weigh in stuff if they support people that they want to sit on their part of that committee. I think we need to listen to that. So that's all I got.
One thing about the library committees, we had a man who has a PhD and retired as a librarian and had put down for Mebane. And they told him that his application would be held and brought forward the next year, and or whenever an opening came up, and it was not. And so he called about it, and he said, I really wanted to do that, and I think I have a wealth of experience. And then also on one of the other ones that we had, I'd say 95% of what the cities and towns ask for as a library committee, they get. But the last one was, the lady had already been on there. They liked her. She was doing a good job. I asked several people, and she reapplied to stay on. And it's one of the things I brought up at the last meeting. People get put on committees, they go to 2 or 3, and they say, I don't like this, I'm not even going to go anymore. This is, when you have somebody who shows up, who everybody likes, and who offers suggestions that are relevant to what they're doing, then I think those people should stay on the committee because they are liked and doing a great job with it. So 95% of what they asked for, in fact, Commissioner Thompson wanted to change, Graham wanted to, they put down who they wanted, Commissioner Thompson wanted to offer for somebody else to be on it. So we do try to follow what they put down and what they ask, but, you know, out of 95% of them are who they asked for, and that's who we put on. Thank you.
May I add to you, since you wanted to call my name out? Commissioner Thompson did not suggest Bonnie Whitaker, who's a friend of mine, because she's also an elected official in Graham.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with her, because I think the world of her, and I talked to her on the phone.
Yeah, I
That
didn't say
was why.
anything about it.
Yeah, because
And
I think
she's a
the
friend of
more
mine,
people
too.
we can get involved in this county, instead of just the same group, I think it's just better.
And she's also a friend of mine, and I talked to her about it too.
Okay.
But just saying that we did get who they wanted. That was the only point I was trying to make. Okay, so I need a consent or a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
A second.
I'd
All
like to
those-
make a motion or ask to request that we take the 6H and the 6I off the consent agenda and let that be discussed, because this is over a $5 million grant and also around $500,000 on the other one, and I got those figures today, and I think we just can't approve stuff we just can't say real easy, we're gonna give you permission to apply. This isn't you, Sheriff, because we did this to the Family Justice Center last year. They come in and wanted to have permission just to apply for a grant, and we didn't let that work. And so I think we need to at least have a presentation, if the sheriff doesn't have a deadline in 24 hours, if that could happen.
Anyone want to second that motion?
I mean, I know what the grant request is for, so I don't know why we need to, I mean, we're trying to improve the jails and get some stuff done so we don't have
You know,
sleeping on the floor.
but the public doesn't know. That's what I'm saying. They may want to know since they pay for everything. I know this is a federal grant, but I think it's important that our citizens know everything.
You could add those to the end.
I could what?
If you'd like to add those two items to the end of the agenda, we can discuss them.
Okay.
And you could make a motion to approve consent agenda without those two.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all right. We'll do that and add those to the,
I'll second the motion, that makes it formal.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right, so now, we are going to the public hearing, which everyone's here about. I need a motion to go into the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public hearing is opened now. Leonard Harrison, did you want to speak again?
He left.
Oh, he left, okay. Mr. Bill Shaw?
So I'm Bill Shaw, I'm still at 1802 Inglewood Drive. So I'm here today asking that you vote for a 2-year moratorium on new data center construction in Alamance County. We need time to address unrestricted construction of hyperscale data centers. I'm not asking for a ban, I'm not anti-business, I'm not anti-technology. I worked in technology my entire career. But we need time to pause and make sure we're addressing the issues that are going to affect us here locally. Development should be done responsibly and with planning. A moratorium does give us time to deal with that. Alamance County should not be expected to make or be forced into irreversible decisions when these fundamental rules are still being debated. This is especially true with our lack of zoning and land use regulations around, around the county. Large data centers can become some of the largest individual electrical users in the community. They require new energy generation, substations, transmission lines, and other infrastructure. They need electric and water, and they take about as much as a small city, as much as a city of 20 to 50,000 people. They have a big impact. I've heard someone suggest that the electrical needs can be met with solar power or other green technologies. Let's be real, a small hyperscale data center, about 100 megawatts, needs about 400 to 500 acres of solar panels if you're going to use solar. I don't know if any of us want a small nuclear reactor in our backyards either. That's probably not a great choice for Alamance County. And if we put it somewhere else, then we still have to build the grid infrastructure to bring that data to them. I think this expansion, I've talked about how it would impact people's utility bills. The state is considering rules to help us control those costs and keep those burdens from the taxpayers by requiring the big data center builders to pay for their construction, pay for their impacts. Senate Bill 730 addresses quite a bit of that. Helps protect the residential and other customers that are Duke and other utility customers. Our water resources are shared by households, farms, businesses, industry, and natural ecosystems. A data center, even of a smaller scale, could use up to 1.5 million gallons of water per day. Okay, I'll put that into scale. The Mora Mill project, 460,000 gallons per day, just to give it some perspective. Even if they put in what's called a closed loop system, at some point they have to expel that polluted water into our watersheds and aquifers and then refresh that. So it doesn't totally eliminate the problem of water use, it just kicks it down, and then we got to deal with the pollution aspects of it. Data centers are not like ordinary office buildings and other types of conventional development like industrial centers or anything else. They have their issues with noise and pollution and all the other things that come along with them. Wow, that went quick. I urge you all to consider the 2-year moratorium to give us time so we can make responsible decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Ewing?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Sean Ewing. I'm an electrical and computer engineer. I'm a quality engineer. I'm a candidate for Alamance County Commissioner. I'm standing before you to urge this board to enact a full 2-year moratorium on new industrial developments, specifically targeting hyperscale data centers. Let's be honest with each other. Anything less than a full 2-year pause, a 60 or 90-day delay is just kicking the can down the road past the upcoming elections. Our community's future shouldn't be governed by election cycles. 2 years is not a delay. It is a critical pause button that gives time to investigate these facilities and establish proactive land use. Right now, Alamance County operates without comprehensive zoning. That means heavy industrial projects can drop right next to family farms or high intensity, and dense residential developments can move next to quiet residential neighborhoods. A full 2 years allows us to write clear rules that explicitly protects residential rights, defend property values, and preserves our rural character before groundbreaking ceremonies even begin. When we think about hyperscale data centers, it's easy to view them as high-tech warehouses, but in reality, they operate much more like oil refineries. Like a refinery, a hyperscale data center is an intensive, resource-heavy utility built to process raw compute. Both bring heavy local externalities, massive strain on our power grid, huge demands on water infrastructure, and persistent noise pollution. And tech moves fast. AI firms are chasing the cheapest power available right now. And what happens down the road when they're obsolete and can't compete on price? Will these massive data centers be able to reinvent themselves over the next decade? Or will the county be holding the bag with stranded, obsolete assets taking up our rural land? It's simply not clear. We owe it to our residents not to perform quick political fixes or rush into multi-decade commitments when the long-term math is uncertain. Let's do this right, folks. Let's take 2 years. Let's protect our infrastructure, establish zoning that lifts up citizens' rights, and make sure our Alamance County controls its own future. Again, my name is Sean Ewing, and I thank all the board members for their time. Thank you.
Christopher Latham?
Hello, my name is Christopher Latham, and I come before you as an Elon student, a near lifetime resident of Alamance County, and as a proud organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I think that the consensus of the county is pretty clear, and that's why we don't want data centers in our communities. And it's shocking to me how city councils and other boards of commissioners in Guilford, in Greensboro, across the country have ignored the overwhelming sentiment that has been provided to them. We realize the potential data centers have for development, and we don't deny that, but it's not going to be done sustainably. We have seen historically and across counties who this is going to hit the most. It's going to hit the poor, it's going to hit the black and brown areas of Alamance the hardest, and these big corporations are not going to abide very amicably by any restrictions that are set on them. They go with what's cheapest, not with what's best for people. And I think it's been pretty clear to see that across the country. Moreover, we're currently in a drought in this area. Jordan Lake in the Triangle has dropped so low that you can see roads that were previously submerged. That's not normal. Can you imagine what Saxpahaw is going to look like when that happens to it? The cost of data centers are extremely apparent, and the cost is probably going to fall on us. It's honestly ridiculous to me that so many people from across the aisle can be so against one issue, and so many commissioners ignore it, either due to personal agendas or because they think they know better than the average person. I should also note real quickly that it's not generally considered common couth or something to celebrate when all of your constituents boo you in an area when they're really not supposed to. That's not common at all. And generally, also, I'd like to note that we are in Dixie, the most marginalized and historically exploited part of this country. It always seems to me that when the nation develops, it's always the poor, the rural, and the marginalized in this part of the country that pay the price. We don't need to pay the price again. We don't need more carpetbagger developers coming down here to develop things we don't want. I urge people to continue coming out and showing their voices. I urge the Board of Commissioners to pass a moratorium proper and get community approval in the areas you're going to put it in before even considering data center construction for the future. I love this county. I grew up here. I chose to go to university here, and I want what's best for it. And data centers are not going to help it thrive. Thank you.
Susan Berticelli? You've already, okay. All right, Carl Temple?
I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you ladies and you gentlemen, and all you people sitting in the back. Most of what I wanted to say has been covered, but I do have a question. Who's going to pay for this? I work for Duke Energy in transmission line department. That's working on the lines from a generator plant to the substations. They have all peaked. They are all loaded. All the generating power is peaked. You probably got the same letter I did 2 months ago. Duke Power is loaded to the gills. The letter stated, we will knock $5 off your power bill if we can cut your air conditioner off. We'll put a little breaker on there, and if we have permission, we can, with a computer, cut your air conditioner off sometime this summer when our load peaks. If the load is already peaked, that tells you we're going to have a whole lot more generating power. Who's going to pay for it? We're going to probably have to have some generator plants. And let me tell you something. Windmills won't do this with AI. It certainly won't. And the sunshine's not going to do it for AI. It's going to be a generator plant that some of you people may not like, but it's going to have it. So my question is this. Who's going to pay for it? Because we got to have it. I'm not for a data center, and I'm going to make a remark that I hope nobody holds against me. But someday we will have a lot more data centers than we got right now. Appreciate each one of y'all coming out. Make somebody's day this week.
Peter Childers?
Sorry. Well, first of all, I'm sorry? Yeah, sorry. My voice is usually pretty loud, but okay. Is that better? Yes. All right. So first thing before I get started with what I wrote down here is the fact that NPR reported that you guys have already decided on a 6-month moratorium. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was done on Sunday and it was done today on Monday. So I'll just leave that. You can make comments on it if you want. But I'm here to support a 1-year moratorium, a minimum. I guess other people have 2 years. That's fine with me. So we have to, the community needs a chance to understand all of the implications of living next door to these hyperscale industrial sites. This is a complicated issue with many negative facets, which could be life-changing for anyone who has no choice of where these facilities could be located. There needs to be some ground rules to protect citizens. A moratorium would allow time to draft some rules. I've done so much investigation and would not wish anyone in the community to lose their quiet enjoyment of their property for this type of industry designed to support AI and profit unaccountable billionaires. Some of the important issues would be groundwater use for cooling, massive power line construction, loud humming from large power lines and multiple transformers, to noise from backup generators. Some facilities even use dozens of full-time natural gas or diesel generators, emitting large amounts of pollutants with the noise. These massive operations can even create a heat dome from cooling, which increases the need for more costly air conditioning in surrounding neighborhoods. I propose this moratorium to be only the start of further public meetings to air truth of what is an industry created by a handful of billionaire oligarchs who have a vision of their future, which largely does not include benefits to ordinary citizens. AI puts our water at risk, our jobs at risk, and our data privacy at risk. Big Brother will be watching. Oh, and one last thing. Many governments have signed non-disclosure agreements with data center developments. I'm asking if any commissioners have signed an NDA or would sign one to keep the data center construction secret from the community. So maybe a pledge tonight would be a good point. So thank you for letting me speak. We need a lot of discussion on this. I've been doing a lot of personal research to make sure I'm somewhat informed, and we would probably need more public meetings as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Scott Snare?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Scott Snare. I'm a semi-retired data analyst and defense contractor. And this evening I was going to support a 2-year moratorium and suggest rather than zoning, which is not really the culture of Alamance, but perhaps consider a targeted ordinance against the development of data centers in Alamance County. I would like to make a business case for it, something that we haven't really heard tonight. And here it is. When I first got out of the military, one of my first jobs was as a shift foreman at a paper mill up on Lake Ontario. It was cold up there. Now those mills up there, they used a lot of fresh water, about 2 to 3 million gallons per day pulled out of Lake Ontario. That water was then treated and put back in Lake Ontario, which was drinking water for the local community. Pretty crazy when you think about it. Used a lot of electricity, and it used a lot of steam. And it made a racket. It made a lot of noise, 24/7, especially on that side of town. And yet, there were very little complaints from the people who lived in that town. Why? Because everybody worked at the mill. If you didn't work at the mill, you worked at the power plant that ran the mill, or you worked for the steam plant that supplied the steam to the mill. If you didn't work at one of those 3 places, there were only other 2 options. You worked for the municipality, or you owned and ran a bar. There were about 30 bars in that town of only 10,000 people. I think it had something to do with the winter, but let me move on. Okay, now you contrast that with the data center. All the water use, all the power, all the pollution, all the loud noise, none of the jobs. None. Those data centers only have about 10 to 20 people in them, including the minimum wage security workers. That is a bad business decision. That is sinfully, sinfully bad. And I would encourage you to consider again a 2-year moratorium to see where the technology leads. And then after that, forget about the zoning, targeted ordinance against the data centers. Thank you for your time.
Drew Benton.
Didn't know this was round two, but here we are.
That's what I was trying to tell everybody.
I'm still a hard no for the data center. I don't care how you justify it, I'm still a hard no. I'm a local business owner here too, and I think, you know, instead of supporting somebody from out of town, why don't we support somebody here in town? You know what I mean? I'm a small business, and I very little support from anybody here. So I would encourage you guys to maybe nix the data center and come visit me when you get a chance. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Henry Vines.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Henry Vines, live 3450 Isaac Drive. Well, Commissioners, Steve, I want to tell you too that not all your constituents opposes zoning, because I think you know I'm one and several others. So, just for that comment. These data centers are not an issue that's been just now brought up. 4 years ago, Commissioner Lashley brought before this board that data centers were going to be coming to Alamance County if we didn't do something. At that time, the board says, well, there's nothing there, so we don't need to do anything. But data centers has been on the table for a long time. So has zoning in this county. So has development in this county. Commissioners, I agree with that we need to put a moratorium on these data centers. I don't think it needs to be no 2 years. It's not going to take that long to design and put together an ordinance that would allow data centers to operate in rural Alamance County, if indeed they need to be there. There's restrictions and guidelines and stuff that can be put on, and it don't take that long to get it done. I served on the planning board, and I know we can get it done. It's just we got to get it approved by you 5 commissioners. The thing that's really at the issue here is where. Where do these data centers need to be located if they're located outside the incorporated area, out in the country where I live? These are the things that needs to be addressed as in any industry, so that residential, business, industry don't intertwine with each other and cause each other problems. If a landfill is there, residential shouldn't be able to come right next to it and cause it trouble. Same way the other way around. Only way we can do this is through zoning. We have a comprehensive plan that's been put before this board 2 years ago that would designate where business, where residential, where commercial can do. It's a good plan. It's been there. And it's been supported by the citizens of Alamance County through many, many town halls and everything. It's not like this was brought up and done by just a little group of people over here called the planning board. So I would encourage you tonight to move forward with what really needs to be done is zoning, and where business and all can take care, where these data centers can go and be put in a place that would not be detrimental to the community. I appreciate your time.
Carol Troxler.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Carol Troxler. I live on the Amick Road in Boone Township. I live in the country. I like living in the country. I paid for the land to live in the country, and I am wide open, vulnerable to anybody with money who wants to come in right next to me and do whatever they want to, which will endanger not only my way of life, but the wildlife on my land. I don't have a lot of land, but believe me, the wildlife have found it because there's so much building up that there's almost no place that they can go. And that's true across the county. We have little patches of places where wildlife can survive. And folks, I have believed for years that we need serious zoning. And I'm here to talk about our proposed data center moratorium. I hope you will give it 2 years, but more importantly than the amount of time, I hope you will really do some serious research and use people who know what the issues are with data centers. I don't know. I'm a historian and I'm proud of it, but I don't know data centers. No. But people do, and if we don't really bring together minds that can work on this and just depend on who we know, who wants it and who doesn't know it, then we're going to be in more trouble than we are now. This data center thing is new. Nobody knows how to really deal with it. It's not just us in Alamance County. It's an unprecedented situation that we are in. And so we need to sit back, pull back, bring in good minds who know something about it, and put together a plan that's good for Alamance County, for its people, for its wildlife, and for its water. I should tell you that I have a well. Everybody on my road has a well. Most people, well, everybody who lives in unincorporated areas depend on wells, for goodness sakes. This is a good well. We had it dug in 1975, and it's still going well. But who knows what may move in next to me that's going to ruin the aquifer, that's going to ruin the groundwater, and it won't be just me. It'll be the rest of the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Benita Rayner.
Good evening. My name's Benita Rayner. I live here in Graham. I'm here tonight to speak in the opposition of bringing the data centers to Alamance County and ask for there to be at least a 2-year moratorium. I want to begin by speaking not only as a resident and member of this community, but from my own perspective as Occaneechi Saponi. And I am a member of the Occaneechi Band of Saponi Nation. I speak here in representation of myself and from the deep personal connection to the land and where we live. I'm also a community advisor for Seven Directional Service, which is an Indigenous-led nonprofit that fights for environmental justices along with other initiatives as well. For Indigenous people, land is not simply property or a resource to be developed. It is part of who we are. Our relationship with the land, water, forest, wildlife, and natural resources is something that must be respected and protected for our future generations. That is why environmental preservation matters so deeply to me. I'm not against technology, progress, or responsible economic development, but economic development should improve the quality of life for the people who already live here, not put our water, electricity, land, and communities at risk. A large data center can place enormous demands on our public resources. These facilities require tremendous amounts of electricity and require significant amounts of water for cooling. That raises an important question. What are we willing to give up in order to bring these facilities into our community? Our water is not an unlimited resource. Our land is not an unlimited resource. Our environment is something we can simply, is not something that we can simply replace once it has been damaged. We also have to consider the impact on the surrounding communities. Data centers can bring large construction projects, increase traffic, industrial scale electrical infrastructures, substations, and so forth. These impacts can change the character of our rural communities and neighborhoods permanently. We must also ask who will pay for these infrastructures required to support such a massive operation. If taxpayers and ordinary utility customers are expected to absorb these costs while corporations receive incentives and tax breaks, then we need to seriously consider whether that would truly benefit Alamance County, and I think I'm being cut off. But I will end here by saying, so I respectfully ask for our community leaders to pause, listen to the community, fully study the environmental and economic impacts, and put the long-term health of Alamance County ahead of the short-term promises, and not, so let's not leave behind a legacy of concrete power lines, noise, and depleted resources. And for those who are in favor of bringing data centers, let's put them in there.
Your time's up. Okay. Dante Bowman.
Kelly, how many more speakers have we got?
Time for a recess.
Yeah,
You want a recess?
Yeah.
Okay, Dante, if I can interrupt you one moment, they've asked that we can take a brief recess. So I need a motion to take a brief recess for 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're in recess for 10 minutes. back to order.
Y'all want a cough drop?
If the gentleman that was at the podium would come back. Where's the other sheet?
Meku,
And state your name, please.
Meku, Dante, Megiko Hanela, Iwati, Hillsborough, Ya, Akanese. What I said was, hello, I'm called Dante and I live in Hillsborough. I also have roots here in Alamance County. I'm Afro-Indigenous and I'm here to speak against the data center that is trying to come to Alamance County. Data centers constrain natural resources. These facilities consume millions of gallons of drinking water, which will put our communities at serious risk, such as local watersheds will most likely be polluted by chemical cooling wastewater. Data centers could possibly raise water bills and affect local residents. And I know everybody in the community behind me do not want their water bills to be up, like raised from the data center. There's a quote from Mo Brings Plenty. He's an actor from Yellowstone, a Native American actor. He said that your devices cannot supply your drinking water, meaning you will not be able to drink from your phone. So I am really against this data center, and I do not want it to come here in Alamance County because we already have enough like projects being built. For example, we have Buc-ee's being built, which is unfortunately being built on my ancestors' tribal great trading path. The Occaneechees traded on that trading path that Buc-ee's unfortunately is going to be built on with the Sispaha Native Americans. Yeah. So if this doesn't go into plan, which I hope it don't, do not build no data center because we do not need that here in Alamance County. BY, thank you.
Dan Malone.
Commissioners, my name's Dan Malone. I'm a resident of Saxpahaw here, and to preface this, I own a fairly good-sized commercial industrial electrical contracting company based out of Mebane. So that being said, this data center could potentially make me a lot of money. Now, there's a caveat to that. Infrastructure. I do not want to see our local infrastructure stressed any more than it already is. That especially includes our power grid and our local aquifers. I have a lovely well that tests amazing and the water is delicious. I'd rather not lose that. I also work fairly closely with Duke Energy on a very regular basis with construction of some fairly large pieces of electrical infrastructure in the area, including the U.S. Postal Service. We're installing a lot of EV chargers at facilities all over the area, and that in and of itself is causing a massive amount of stress on our already overly taxed grid. Duke likes to tell me about it in our meetings. I don't really have a dog in that fight because that's between them and the Postal Service. But that being said, the cost passed down to the taxpayers in this area will be tremendous if that infrastructure is required to be upgraded on the scale and the terms, time-wise, that is going to be required if this data center is pushed through. Therefore, I urge you all to please consider at least a 2-year moratorium to, at the very least, allow us to see what these are going to bring, if this technology is going to be viable in the future with the obsolescence and the speed of obsolescence with a lot of what's going on right now. Who's to say we'll even need this data center in 2 years? Who's to say we won't have moved on to something else? Or at that point, who's to say something like modular nuclear reactors wouldn't be a viable option, which would make it a little bit more appealing. At least the cost wouldn't be passed on to taxpayers. That's more or less it. You have a good night.
Thank you. Gary Ball.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Gary Ball. Live in the Ashleywood neighborhood in Elon. My daughter, my son-in-law, and 4 grandkids live in Mebane. So we're rooted in Alamance County. And I don't need to tell anyone in this room probably that we live in one of the fastest growing parts of the state, in the fastest growing state in the country. I think only Brunswick County is ahead of this area as far as growth in North Carolina. and it's running amok down there, by the way. Probably know that too.
Just a little bit closer to the mic, please.
I'm sorry.
Just a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay. My concern is with the stress and the strain that the growth that we've had and the growth that's projected over into the next decade is gonna tax our infrastructure, our power, our water. I think we're gonna have enough to chew on with just the growth that's here. Some gentleman mentioned a business decision. I think the business decision that needs to be made tonight is to adopt a moratorium, 1 year, 2 year, to do due diligence, to write the rules of the road on our terms, not on their terms, and be proactive rather than reactive. As we're here tonight, across this country, there are boards just like this board that are wrestling with lawsuits, you know, various kinds. This entity is suing that entity because a data center came in. Just up I-85, my hometown of Henderson is wrestling with Franklin County now because Franklin County wanted to come and start getting water out of Carr Reservoir. So that's going to end up in their Knuffle. So those kind of things are going on all over the nation. The water issue is critical, and so I would urge you to take up the 2-year moratorium and let us do our due diligence. And I thank you for this forum.
Thank you. Hillary Messer.
My name's Hillary Messer. I'm a teacher here in ABSS. I would much rather be speaking in front of my 6 or 7-year-olds. Good evening, members of the board, fellow community members. I moved here because of my family, the trees, nature, and wildlife, not to see a concrete jungle like I watched grow around me in South Florida. I've seen this happen already, and I don't want it to happen here. We need strong regulations in place that protect our residents, both animals and humans, our water and our economy. It is easy to be swayed by promises of economic growth, but research tells a very different story for rural communities. A study by Georgia Institute of Technology revealed that while metropolitan areas reap the economic rewards of data centers, rural, non-metropolitan counties see no measurable economic gains. Instead of long-term prosperity, rural towns are often left with tax breaks for corporations and heavy burdens for residents. In states like Texas and Virginia, data centers enjoy sweeping tax exemptions on hardware, cooling equipment, and electricity. When multi-billion-dollar corporations don't pay their fair share, local taxpayers are left to foot the bill for the massive infrastructure upgrades these facilities require. This is something North Carolinians are already facing with their plans to have a zero corporate tax put into place by 2029. The physical strain on our local utilities would be staggering. Consider a single mid-sized data center operating at 100 to 150 megawatts. That single facility can consume up to 1.5 million gallons of water every day for cooling, amounting to roughly 1.8 billion gallons a year. That is equal to the annual water footprint of a town of up to 50,000 people. Worse, up to 83% of the water is permanently lost to evaporation. In an agricultural region, this is very detrimental to farms. Furthermore, the electricity required to power these facilities, hundreds of megawatt hours every single day, forces power companies to build costly new infrastructure. When utility providers pull these expansion costs, local families and small businesses face skyrocketing electricity and water bills. So yes, I got the bill that my Duke Energy is going up, just probably like everybody else in here. So studies have shown and research has been done that if a data center of mid-size or more comes here, your bill will probably go up between 6 and 29%. This is why national advocacy groups like Food and Water Watch, along with 230 other organizations, are calling now for a moratorium on new data center construction. Please exercise your safeguards to this community. Let us hold off on approvals and enact a moratorium until thorough research is conducted and strict protections are established. We're not the only residents, animals are too. So when I heard the thing about, let's put it near the trees, well, if we're building everywhere else and now we're gonna put a data center where there's 50-foot trees in place, the animals are gonna hear the noise too. Last but not least, without the zoning laws, These will go up near minorities, rural communities, and lower economic status areas. Their voices are often not heard. If you don't want it outside of your front window, next to your house, then think before you put it next to theirs.
Schopel? Pronounce
Good
that
evening.
right.
I'm Tom Shopler, Morrow Mill Road. Data centers are extremely complex. There's a great deal of information out there that we all are hearing about, some for, some against, positive, negative. I don't know what all's correct. I do know that technology changes extremely fast, so the idea that you may be left with something that is obsolete is a good possibility. What I do know is that, and actually I have a question for the county attorney. A moratorium of a particular length can be changed. The length can be changed. If you say 2 years and after a year they've figured it out, they can say, okay, we're going to cancel the moratorium, correct?
Would you like me to respond?
Sure.
Yes, that's correct. So the initial adoption length is not binding.
So I would ask you to put in a 2-year moratorium, and then if you find that you don't need it, you can, relinquish the extra time. There's so much that is unknown. There's anecdotal, I just heard an anecdotal study about a cattle farmer next to a data center, and they have noticed a significant increase in the number of miscarriages in the cattle. Is it because of the data center? I don't know. But these are things that have to be studied and figured out, and unless you have enough time to find out the answers, you may make a decision without having all the information you need. So I encourage you to please do what counties all over the country are doing and put a moratorium in place. Thank you.
Israel, it looks like Builders, I'm probably not pronouncing it. Balderas, okay, sorry. Ooh, I skipped over Richard.
Good evening, County Commissioners. My name is Israel Balderas. I live at 1121 West Davis Street in Burlington, North Carolina. I also teach First Amendment law at Elon University. I'm only saying that for affiliation purposes. I'm not here to speak as a faculty member. I am here to speak as a First Amendment attorney and a former television journalist. I teach politics and media, and one of the big things that we're going to be looking at this semester with my students are what are the issues that are driving the election in November. And you probably have seen there's a lot of anger out there, and it's understandable. But one particular issue is standing out, and we're seeing the data. Let me quote from the Harvard Gazette. More than 4,000 data centers are already in operation, mostly in Virginia, Texas, and California. Data center developers and tech giants argue the project benefits communities, but public opposition is mounting over the large water and electricity demands. We've seen that tonight, and we've heard it. And there's one thing that we're seeing in the data that really you hold a lot of power over, and I want to at least encourage you to keep this in mind going forward. And that is that over and over what we're seeing, and I'm quoting from Public Citizen, in Virginia, home to the world's largest concentration of data centers, 80% of localities with proposed or existing data centers have NDAs in place. Now, we heard a gentleman earlier today talking about NDAs, and he mentioned that the decision has already been decided. I don't know if that is true or not, but I would at least caution you that whatever you decide, one way or the other, I'm not speaking for or against data centers. I am speaking as a First Amendment attorney about transparency and about accountability. Whatever you decide, you will ease the concerns of citizens in this county if publicly you make a statement that you will not sign any NDAs. We are seeing the data left and right that when the county commissioners are open and transparency about the decisions that they make and they tell the citizens the truth, there's more civil discourse on the matter, there are more conversations to be had, more people feel like they have power. And you have the power as county commissioners to make a decision that no matter what, we are not going to try to use the laws to circumvent and make excuses as to why you cannot tell the public what's going on behind those doors. So my encouragement to you, as a citizen, as a First Amendment attorney, as a former journalist, if you go ahead with whatever you do, moratorium, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you are honest with everyone here, I think no matter what happens, our county will be much better for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Jada.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Major Retired Richard Ojeda. I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress in North Carolina's 9th Congressional District, and I believe in innovation. I believe North Carolina should compete for new industries and good-paying jobs, but growth cannot come at the expense of the people who already live here. When it comes to AI data centers, we need serious regulation and oversight before we rush into decisions that could affect our communities for decades. Let's start with energy. If a massive data center is going to consume enormous amounts of electricity, that company should be responsible for paying for and generating, where appropriate, the energy it needs. Working families should not see their electric bills go up because a billion-dollar corporation needs more power. And then there's water. We need to answer a basic question. What is the plan for our water? What happens in communities that already have limited water resources? What happens during a drought? What happens when families, farmers, and businesses are competing for the same supply? We cannot approve these projects today and figure out those answers tomorrow. Most importantly, we need to listen to the people who actually live in these communities, the families paying the bills, the farmers depending on the water, and the small businesses that have invested their lives here. Economic development should happen in partnership with our communities for the benefit of us all, not just as a ploy to make the rich richer at the expense of the rest of us. I'm not against innovation. I'm against rushing into something without knowing who is going to pay the price. Let's establish clear standards. Let's demand transparency. Let's make sure these companies pay their fair share. And let's have a real plan for energy and water before moving forward. North Carolina deserves economic growth that works for everyone, not just the corporations coming here. And I would like to say that data centers are not going to be bringing in huge six-figure salaries. The people that work those, they bring in from other areas. The jobs that will be open around here will be security, custodial, and maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Starsberry.
Hi there, Commissioner Board. My name is Matt Stansberry, and I live in Alamance County, Burlington, 1425 Shamrock Drive. And I'm probably the closest thing to a data center expert in this room. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've advised the global hyperscale on their global risk management strategies. I've been in data centers in every continent. I wouldn't want a hyperscale data center next door to my house. But I think this moratorium is political theater. It's aimed at a hypothetical problem while this county is failing residents on problems that are already here. I don't have a hypothetical neighbor problem. I have actual ones. The runoff coming off the D.R. Horton construction site flowing into Little Alamance Creek is hot to the touch because it's so full of sediment. Shawmut, they don't employ that many people, 150. They're harming the water quality for 1 million people downstream with PFAS. Alamance Foods Distribution on 49 and 40 here. It's a mile away from my house. They're running industrial centrifugal chillers and HVAC units all morning, starting at dawn. They flood my woods with low decibel, low frequency noise, and I can't hunt turkey in the spring, in the morning, because I can't hear them, because it's so loud. None of these are data centers, and all of them are wrecking my health and my quality of life in this county. I have 5 kids. They can't touch the water. We can't eat any of the fish. We allow sewage sludge to be poured onto our agricultural fields, and you don't know how much PFAS is in there. You know why? Because I've asked the state biologists. They don't know. These are not hypothetical issues, so I have a really hard time watching this county suddenly discover an urgent need to protect residents from industry that, as far as I know, doesn't actually have any projects proposed. Passing a moratorium is easy. You stop something for a year, everybody gets to say they acted, the cameras leave, and the political attention moves on. And then what?
The same weak monitoring's there, the same uneven enforcement is still there. Decide what every major industrial development project owes the people who already live here. Set measurable standards for stormwater, sediment, water use, noise, emissions, road impacts, and environmental performance, and then measure the outcome. Don't accept a promise that a company will be a good neighbor. Define what being a good neighbor means and put numbers on it. When a company wants to bring billions of dollars of investment to Alamance County, use that leverage. That's the opportunity that data centers actually present. There's an extraordinary amount of capital looking for places to build infrastructure. If a company wants to put billions of dollars here, make sure Alamance County measurably is better because of it. Set minimum environmental community performance standards that are public, measurable, and enforceable. And if they fail to meet them, there should be consequences. That is a much more serious response than a moratorium. In my experience, sophisticated companies in this industry can deal with tough regulation. They can model it, they can price it. What they hate is uncertainty. Rules changing halfway through a project, standards applied differently depending on who's asking, regulations driven by whatever industry happens to be politically unpopular that year. We should be careful assuming that the data center we're afraid of today is the data center that we'll be dealing with 2 years from now. AI is going to be moving from these giant, hyper-dense training clusters to be towards inference, which will be right up in your community, right up in your space 2 years from now when no one's paying attention to this.
Paul Stansberry.
My name is Paul Stansberry. I live in Elon, North Carolina. If it were up to me, there would not be a data center developer stepping foot in Alamance County. I've been hunting and fishing in Alamance County for most of my life. The rivers and forests of Alamance raised me and gave me appreciation for where we live. Data centers would only bring harm to our communities. Our waters are already filled with PFAS and other pollutants. What happens when we run out of clean water? A data center brings in very few jobs, takes up large amounts of land, and pollutes our soil and waterways. If we allow data centers into our home, will you be able to explain to your grandkids why there's a giant concrete box where their favorite park used to be? Large-scale data centers can use the same amount of power as a small town, or more. Although water-saving and energy-saving structures can be implemented in data centers, money-hungry companies prefer to use cheaper, more destructive options. When I get older, I want to go into wildlife biology. I go outside and I study our local wildlife. Recently, the field in front of my house has been demolished to make room for more houses. The pond sediment in the water has turned our waters murky reddish brown. Plastic fencing blocked a family of geese from each other. We had to help them across. I'm fighting for my future. I'm fighting for the future of this land, and I am fighting for the future of this county. In the simplest of terms, a data center is a giant concrete building that houses machines. Consider for a moment what kind of jobs that facility brings in. Security and maintenance. Those are not high-paying jobs, and there aren't a lot of them. If you continue to allow big companies that only wish to harm us into our community, then we can no longer trust the people who are here to protect us in the first place.
Michael Corset? I can't tell what your name is, I'm sorry. Cosciola.
All right. My name is Michael Cocchiola. I live in Alamance out of Gibsonville. I'm about to make a lot of friends in here. I'm here tonight to speak against a moratorium on data centers. I don't believe the county needs to choose between completely unrestricted development and stopping development altogether. I've heard legitimate concerns about water usage, electricity demand, noise, and impacts on neighboring property owners. These concerns are not unique to data centers. I agree those concerns are real and they deserve serious attention, but the way to address them is not to pause all development indefinitely. The way to address them is to measure them and regulate them directly. The question is not whether a data center has impacts, it is whether those impacts are understood, limited, and properly managed. So let's be specific. If a project is proposed, we should ask, how many gallons of water per day will it use? How many megawatts of electricity will it require? Who is responsible for paying for any required substation or grid upgrades? How many decibels will be heard at the property line? What setbacks are required to protect nearby homes? What is the cooling architecture and how does it perform in drought conditions? And what happens during extended periods of high heat or water scarcity? These are not abstract questions. They're measurable engineering and planning questions. And once we have those answers, the county can set clear standards, noise limits, water usage thresholds, infrastructure requirements, and cost-sharing rules. Measure the harm, establish a standard, and hold the developer to it. A lot of this discussion has become a debate about AI itself. Those are separate issues. Data centers support banking, healthcare, communications, cloud computing, logistics, government services, and many other things besides AI. Whether somebody likes or dislikes AI should not determine whether a particular industrial project is appropriate for a particular piece of land. I don't expect a data center to employ thousands of permanent workers, and I don't think we should pretend that it will. But permanent jobs are not only one part of the equation. There are construction jobs, capital investment, property tax revenue, and broader economic activity associated with a major industrial project. The question is not simply how many people will work inside the building. The question is, does the total benefit exceed the total cost to Alamance? And that calculation can only be made honestly if we also quantify the costs, water, power, infrastructure strain, and land use impacts, not just the benefits. I understand that property rights.
Your time, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Denise Nedru.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this hearing. My name is Denise Neveu. I'm an occupational therapist, a Mebane resident since 2021, and a member of Carolina Advocates for Climate, Health, and Equity, otherwise known as CASH. We're a network of health professionals and advocates working to protect the health of North Carolinians in a changing climate. And pardon me, I'm just nervous tonight. I support the proposed moratorium. I believe at least a 1 year, if not a 2 year pause, would provide time to research and develop well-informed standards, as well as to explore the need for zoning policies. I want to discuss some health implications of large and hyperscale data centers, much of which has not yet been mentioned. First of all, water contamination has been mentioned. Water use is a big issue, but data centers can introduce PFAS, forever chemicals, through cooling systems, semiconductors, and fire suppressants. PFAS contamination is linked to developmental, reproductive, immune, and cancer-related health harms. With 3.5 million North Carolinians already exposed to PFAS, above EPA standards in drinking water, strong protections are needed to prevent additional contamination in Alamance County. Second, air pollution. Backup diesel generators emit carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter, contributing to asthma, lung disease, and premature death. Alamance County should require strong pollution control standards for these systems if they're to be implemented. Thirdly, noise exposure. Continuous noise from cooling systems, fans, and generators can contribute to stress, sleep disruption, hypertension, cardiovascular strain, and cognitive impacts, particularly for children. The county should carefully evaluate potential noise impacts, establish protective standards, and require ongoing monitoring, again, if data centers are to be established in Alamance County. Finally, heat. Data centers generate significant waste heat that produces a heat island effect that can worsen already dangerous summer temperatures like those we've been seeing this summer. Increased heat raises risks for cardiovascular and respiratory illness, kidney disease, and other heat-related health impacts, especially for older adults, children, people with disabilities, outdoor workers, and those who are pregnant. Strong waste heat standards and ongoing monitoring are needed. I encourage the county to use CASH, use us as a resource for evidence-based health information as you develop data center policies and regulations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Luke Minola? Minonel?
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this meeting. I'm Luke Minona from Snow Camp. I'm not going to say anything that makes me an expert in data centers, but I do support a moratorium or a ban on data centers in Alamance County. I just don't think we need them here. We don't need a big, ugly building. I don't care if they damage the environment. I don't care if they use water or don't use water or supply jobs or they don't supply jobs, and they certainly aren't going to make the environment better. So I would implore you guys, especially with the economic impacts from data centers. In my job, I do residential and light commercial HVAC, and so I get to see a lot of, unfortunately, impoverished people who just can't even afford to repair their AC unit. They get a cheap window AC unit, or they sit there in their hot house. I've seen customers who can't afford to pay a plumber to redo their septic, and they have septic backing up in their yard, pouring into underneath their trailers, and they just can't afford anything else. I honestly, there's 4 customers that I know of off the top of my head who are just in dire straits financially. Even given an at-cost repair, they can't afford it for their homes. They're going to be homeless in the future if any other catastrophes befall them. So I think cost of living is too high. I think data centers don't help us. Maybe they help America as a whole, but they can go somewhere else, in my opinion. There's already a lot of industry here, and it's beautiful when it's owned by a small business. I can think of a few of my customers who own plants. They have jobs for all the local people who live here. They pay them well. I know the people who own the plant. They care about Alamance County. I can assure you Oracle doesn't give a crap about Alamance County. They just want money, and they're not going to respect regulations, no matter how strictly they're enforced. They just don't work. When you're on a job site, people do whatever they want, and sure, maybe if we spend 2 years or 1 year or 6 months on the moratorium figuring out what regulations and zoning we should use, I just don't want data centers here. I don't think they'll ever be clean. I don't think they'll ever benefit anyone. And I think they're going to just make a lot of people feel doomed that their life in rural Alamance County is going to be over, and it's just going to turn into a concrete jungle. And I'm pretty upset about the industrialization as a whole. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Tremaine Jeffries? What?
McHugh Hook, Tremaine Jeffries, Mingiguanela. Hello, everybody. My name is Tremaine Jeffries. I'm a member of the Occaneechi Banasaponi Nation. I don't have anything prepared for tonight, and honestly, I didn't realize I was about to be caught up. But I will say that everybody here has basically already covered everything that I think about data centers. We don't need them. In 1713, the governor of Virginia put me and my family, the Occaneechis, in Fort Christana. And after we left Fort Christana around 1717, we came back down to Alamance, Orange, and Caswell County, where we have not left for the past 300 years. This place has been home for us for generations, and I'm hoping that it will be home for us for generations to come. And just like, I can't remember the gentleman's name, he's gone now, but he said that his kids can't even go to the creek and touch the water. And I'm just like, within an indigenous perspective, think about the next 7 generations of not only our kids, but your kids as well. His kids maybe in the next 7 generations for them, they're gonna be like, yeah, the last time someone in our family could touch the water was when our great granddad was alive. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, I love playing in the water. I love being able to go outside and hear the birds and not hear a hum. And so we just don't need a data center. I'm hoping that you all can all publicly say that y'all will not sign an NDA, because these data centers do come in to offer millions of dollars, and for people, for the commissioners to take the money, and then just no one in here wants a data center. And then the ones that do, just like my cousin Ben said, put it in their backyard and not ours. Yeah, as I was saying, I still got a minute left. Yeah, we just don't need a data center. I'm going to use my minute too, because this is really important that we don't get this data center. So I'm not done yet. But yeah, so just we would all appreciate if y'all all say that you will not sign an NDA. And I think it's really important that you all put the needs of the people above your own personal needs, and don't let money make you go morally bankrupt, basically. Yeah. That's pretty much it. But I'm still gonna stand up here for 30 seconds, because we don't need a data center. I don't know what else to really say. I mean, the cost of the animals and everything, and just like the one lady said about the trees and everything, putting a data center to right near 50-foot trees and everything, although that might not now be in our backyard, it would be in the backyard of our 4-legged relatives and stuff. Which is not something that we should be doing. And just like how we need to look out for each other, we also need to look out for the animals that do live in the area. We are an agricultural county, and we got to look out for our animals as much as we do ourselves. Thank y'all.
Sandra Cook?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a term is being bannered around here a lot tonight, and I venture there are people in the audience that don't know what it means.
The NDA?
NDA. How many people know what an NDA is? I'm impressed. I'm seriously impressed.
Closure agreement. And I can tell you verbatim, we do not do non-disclosure agreements.
Well, a non-disclosure agreement would imply that we were compensated not to discuss something, or not to, which would be a violation of our ethics code.
And the election laws.
And the election codes. I serve on 5 boards, and I have to take election classes every year for every single one of them, so.
Yeah.
It means I won't do it.
And nobody here does it. Ms. Cook? Ms. Cook?
Good evening. My name is Sandra Cook, and I'm a resident of 937 Baker Drive in Haw River. I have a PhD in environmental science, and I'm a professor at Greensboro College, and I have been following the data center issue with curiosity and concern. I want to express my support for a moratorium on data centers in Alamance County. We've already heard a lot of the potential issues surrounding data centers, water use, energy use, noise and light pollution. Actually, maybe light pollution hasn't been named yet, but that's important too. And air pollution, which has been mentioned a little bit, but not that much, and that's actually what I want to highlight. Since 1970, the Clean Air Act has protected Americans' health, protections that were enhanced by the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, passed under the George H.W. Bush administration. But it's also been mentioned that there's data centers all over the U.S., and I want to highlight one in South Haven, Mississippi, where Elon Musk's xAI company's Colossus II data center is operating without the required Clean Air Act permits. This facility operates 27 gas-fired turbines that release nitrous oxides, formaldehyde, and other pollutants. The NAACP has rightfully sued xAI in federal court because communities of color are being exposed to these emissions. But what is most alarming is that in an unprecedented move, President Trump's Department of Justice is arguing that citizen lawsuits cannot proceed when the federal government does not oppose the polluting behavior. Citizen lawsuits are the bread and butter of the Clean Air Act.
In fact, the majority of environmental lawsuits are citizen cases that have shaped environmental law over the past 50 years. The Justice Department's new mind-boggling interpretation of the Clean Air Act is troubling evidence of the Trump administration's sinister efforts to not only undermine environmental protections of all Americans, but set a new, potentially irrevocable legal precedent in doing so. The fact that our government values multi-billion-dollar polluting industries like XAI over safe, healthy air and water is all the more reason that we need to be extremely cautious in allowing data centers and other polluting industries into our communities. I'm sure all of us here today, including you commissioners, are united in the desire for clean air and clean and sustainable water and energy sources for ourselves, our families, and our community members. Thank you for having this hearing, for listening, and for your service.
Thank you. Leslie Arvac. I'm sorry, what did you say? Arevalo.
Oh my goodness, she's so cute. Hi, I'm Leslie Arevalo. I'm really bad with mics. Whenever I facilitate, I tend to do this thing where I zoom in and zoom out, so let me know if I need to get closer to it. I don't have anything prepared today. I honestly found out about this meeting yesterday through, I think it was an Instagram post, and then I worked really late yesterday, so yeah, excuse the filler words and the and the pauses that I will take. I am a political strategist. Currently, my focus is in data and quality control. And being as though, you know, we are in a midterm election year, a lot of the conversations that I've had with organizers and with just folks in the community have been around their concerns with data centers. And I don't want data centers in my county. I think Alamance County is so beautiful. We have beautiful bodies of waters. We have beautiful trails. I love the community here. I was born and raised here. I'm 25 years old. My daughter is, you know, born and so far raised here. And yeah, I am part of the generation that is growing up with AI and that is becoming more and more dependent on it. And that's really unfortunate because a lot of folks my age are really dumb because of that dependency on AI. And I think, you know, AI isn't going anywhere. And I think AI data centers, they can go somewhere else. Let's not ruin our beautiful environments that we have here, our beautiful land that we have here. I think a lot of the things that I wanted to mention today have already been said. One of the biggest things that have impacted me, in my opinion, towards the construction of data sites have been that the agriculture and the farmers have been very, very negatively impacted. And that I think someone else also mentioned, like, the biggest thing, or not the biggest thing, but one of the most heartbreaking facts that I have heard since, you know, just the boom of these AI data centers are that a lot of farmers, specifically in Texas, have stated that a lot of their cattle are about like 90% of their cattle after data centers have been built nearby. They have had, I think the number, don't quote me on this, I think it's 90% stillborn cattle, right? And that's our food, that's our water. Our bees are being negatively impacted. Like, we already have lost such a huge percentage of our bees that keep us fed and that keep us breathing. Yeah, don't put a data center here. Thanks.
Thank you. Bonnie Hummel. Bonnie Hummel. It's Hummel. I guess she's left. Okay, Krista Phillips. Do we have a Krista Phillips coming? Okay.
Phillips, 208 West Carr Street, Mebane. And I have relocated back, I'm North Carolina born and bred, relocated back to Mebane and the Triangle area after having lived in Northern Virginia the last 3 years. Specifically, Prince William, Loudoun, Fairfax counties, where the mega data centers are. Everything that's been mentioned here, because I've been here since the beginning tonight, is a reality there, multiplied by a bazillion. People, boots on the ground, people living there to see, you know, what we're talking about here is hypothetical. What y'all need to do, or what you might want to do, it's just a suggestion, is actually go talk to people that actually live in those communities, how they've been harmed, how the data center, the builders themselves, they have not followed through. There are lawsuits all over the place. The NDAs that are talked about, that's in the news. All of the above that's been mentioned here is there. One thing that has not been mentioned is they have one of the new things now going on. So we've talked about the farmland, you know, being affected and being snarfed up. And I mean, to lose the Alamance red clay, that's a shame. You know, we've got the distribution centers and Buc-ee's, you know, whatever, all those things here. The data centers are mile after mile after mile. It makes these things look like a playground, what we've got here. So I suggest that if you haven't, you go look at it, you talk to the people. And what I skipped over there is one of the things, it has pitted farmers against farmers because neighbors, the data center people are coming in, the county commissioners are coming in trying to talk them into selling to the data centers to be built. So it's pitting farmers against farmers, and now a new thing there, because my daughter and son-in-law work in new home construction. They are actually coming into neighborhoods, into subdivisions, and offering homeowners massive, I mean, multi-million-dollar contracts to buy out their homes, to deplete complete neighborhoods. And so they are pitting now neighbors against neighbors, next door neighbors that have been there for decades. And so it's the money trying to talk. So, you know, we talk about the beauty here. That was all farmland up there. It ain't there no more. I'm grateful to be back in North Carolina, but what I saw there, y'all need to see. Thanks.
Benjamin Andrews. Benjamin Andrews.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Andrews. I live in Burlington, and I work in the data center industry and have since 2012. Pretty much everyone's brought up a lot of the points I wanted to bring up, but I think probably the most important point that needs to be brought up here is that we don't have zoning laws. All of the issues that I didn't actually realize that was a problem here. I came prepared mostly to talk about data centers, but to find out that's the case, it explains why we have so many issues across the town and across the county of haphazard things. So that needs to be addressed, and part of that is making sure we have appropriate requirements. Data centers can bring in money, and they do bring in a lot of investment initially, and we need to make sure that if they do that, that they have the proper incentives. So we can't be giving them huge tax breaks for that initial investment because, as people have brought up, long term, they're not going to have many jobs. It's just that initial investment. So we need to make sure that's protected. The other thing we've brought up is all the environmental concerns. We don't want a hyperscale data center right down the street because that's going to cause massive impacts with sound and everything else. But we also don't want to take in information that is misinformation. We have a lot of people who brought up that big $1.3 billion or 1.3 billion people's worth of water. Most of that number is actually from cooling power. It's from the chilling tower from those power. And so by having appropriate power and making sure that they pay for appropriate power as part of the incentives for them to come here, that prevents those issues and that significantly reduces that usage. We also want to make sure we protect the ground wells. If somebody has groundwater, and if they're gonna take water, they need to make sure that there's some plan to bring that back. They need to make sure that if they are using closed loop, which is typically what most of these hyperscale data centers do because they're more efficient and that costs them less money, when they have these closed loop systems, if they do have to bring water out, we need to make sure they have a plan in place for making sure that's filtered and goes back in the system without straining our already strained water system. Same thing with power. We have a lot of power, and people have brought up that we're not actually at full capacity in Duke, and they even brought up that Virginia situation. That Virginia power data center, where we had that fluctuation, was because that data center, there was a issue with Dominion Energy, where they fluctuated for a short time. There was a voltage change, and so that data center cut out their power and put them on their own generators. When that happened, that caused a change in the voltage, and that caused everyone to have that little flicker. That wasn't actually the data center's fault. That was Duke and Dominion Energy's fault for not having upgraded their infrastructure and making sure they had proper redundancy. And then, so I guess my big point here is that we just need to make sure that when we're making these plans that we're doing a proper analysis into what needs to be done and what protections need to be done. And I don't think a moratorium makes sense necessarily, since it's an arbitrary value, but we need to make sure the plan's there and communities protected.
Thank you. I think this is Brina Rapp. Brina Rapp.
He said he'd gone.
Okay. Want to make sure and give him time. Laura Love.
Hello, my name's Laura Love, and I'm with the North Carolina Data Center Network. Chatham, Gates, Orange, Watauga, Rowan, Swain, Northampton. What do all of these counties have in common? They all have a moratorium, and Northampton has a 3-year moratorium. Same as Boone, New Hill, Brevard, Wendell, Kings Mountain. Clay County and the Cherokee Nation have a ban, not a moratorium, but a ban. These places know that the data center industry works in obfuscation. These places chose to take a breather to understand what the data industry does and the games it plays with people, water, health, power, and land. I urge Alamance County to follow in the footsteps of these forward-thinking North Carolina counties, cities, and towns. The North Carolina data industry is the data center industry is an extractive industry. It extracts clean air, clean water, power, fertile land. It extracts health of the residents, not just neighbors which will abut the property, but those who live downwind or downstream. It extracts wealth from the community. First off is the infrastructure that must be built. So for instance, the roads that must be rebuilt after 2 years of heavy construction equipment rolling across the road 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, or the water infrastructure that must be built to accommodate the millions of gallons of water that the data center will be discharging. Or the temporary housing that must be built for the 1 or 2 years of construction, vacant afterwards. Another way data centers try to extract wealth is through incentives they get when approaching a jurisdiction. Data center companies look for power, water, and land. This is really what they're looking for. But they make it seem like they're looking for economic incentives. They are trillion-dollar companies, and the millions you might give them in economic incentives is beans in their immense profit. Now let's take a look at North Carolina. The state estimates that if the 6.3 gigawatts are built out, the state stands to lose $1.5 to $2.3 billion. In fact, earlier in the summer, there was a bill passing through the House that dealt with exactly this. The final bill comes at the end. When the data center is finished, 10 to 15 years, or never occupied because of the AI bubble, you'll be left having to pay for the land and demolishing the building. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Molly Hubbard?
I know your father and mother.
Everybody knows my dad.
That's right.
Hello, my name is Molly Hubbard. I'm born and raised here in Burlington, North Carolina, and I am for a moratorium on data centers for at least 2 years. I am concerned about a lot of the issues surrounding AI and untamed development in general in our rural communities, and especially concerned for the environment. I live out in the Western Alamance area now, and we like our space and our quiet and have a deep reverence for my home county and love it deeply, and that's why I've stayed here, or, you know, went to school and I've come back, okay? I'm a mother of 2. My son is level 3 autistic and nonverbal, and one of the main ways to keep him regulated is being outside and in nature. Loud, purposeless noise affects him deeply. It physically causes him pain. It will cause him to run away from the situation and cause this deep, deep unsettledness in him. If you could see his joy when he's out in nature and learning the trails and just being out there, being a part of it, you would deeply understand the importance of protecting these spaces. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry. Keeping our water clean and not incorporating a terrible droning noise that would affect our community and our wildlife would be greatly appreciated. My daughter deeply loves all the wildlife we encounter on our hikes and searching for salamanders and tadpoles. And I don't want to ever tell her, you can't touch the water. You know, like that's just, I can't even describe the hurt that would cause me or my husband, just to have to keep her from the water and the wildlife. She is constantly talking about helping animals and nature as a life path, and constantly searching for salamanders and tadpoles and just the joy that it brings her. Please consider the quality of life of our community. And I agree, if you don't want it in your backyard, don't put it in ours. Thank you.
Andrea Washka? Andre? You're going to have to move that microphone.
Dude, you are tall.
All right, good evening, y'all. Thank you so much for staying late. I know that this is an important issue, and so I really appreciate you guys putting in the time to understand it. So my name is Andre Washka. I'm from Burlington, North Carolina. And a little bit about me. I am a massive nerd, just like huge numbers nerd. That's what I do. I have a PhD in statistics from Berkeley, and I'm currently a professor at Elon University. So what I want to talk to you about is 2 things I know really well, which are statistics and LLMs. So statistics, speaking, one of my favorite quotes, I'm going to clean it up a little bit, is from Mark Twain, and he says, "There's lies, there's darn lies, and there's statistics." And that's something that I think is extremely, and this is coming from a statistician, right? And I love that quote, that statistics can really be morphed and manipulated in ways to suit whoever is presenting them. So there is a famous paper that came out of George Mason recently, actually about Loudoun County, talking about home prices. And they wanted to see the impact of home prices in the area after these AI data centers. And their initial analysis showed, well, there's no effect. Well, that seems great, right? All right, problem solved. At least that issue is off the table. Well, not so fast. How many people are aware of the term confounders? Have you guys heard of that before? So what a confounder is it's a variable. It's another aspect of the data that when that is incorporated into your analysis, the effect actually goes away, or the effect changes in some way. And what they found in Loudoun County is that when you add in variables like the actual location of the house, when you talk about the schools there, when you talk about all of these other aspects, and you account for them, you see that these home prices are actually negatively affected by these AI data centers. So this is just one example of the many things. This is why I am in support of at least a 2-year moratorium, to be able to go through these different claims that are being made. We've seen these claims over and over again, whether you want to talk about the cigarette industry, whether you want to talk about the oil industry. There are certain things that people have said throughout, over time where you really need to dive into the data and have someone who can actually analyze it, look at all of the variables, and be able to parse out what the true effect is. What is the causal effect of this new introduction of AI data centers? Last thing to talk about is LLMs. One thing no one has mentioned is something like DeepSeek, which is coming from the Chinese. The Chinese DeepSeek models actually uses way less data than the current models, ChatGPT, Claude, etc. It's the Wild West of AI models right now. So I think it would be very foolish to nail our colors to the mast of this current model that they have for data centers. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Bethany West.
That's too cute.
I'm short. It's okay. I'm used to it. I wanted to maybe offer a different perspective. I am definitely against data centers, but it's for a different, not quite a different reason. My daughter is high in special needs. Another mom said the same thing. She has a shunt in her head that monitors and regulates the fluid that drains from her head to the rest of her body. She has extreme issues with noise. She will start crying, and because of the brain damage she suffered, she will stop breathing. And if we have noise issues from data centers, if we have electrical issues, because the grid is over its limit, if we're having water issues, my daughter depends on water. She has a feeding pump. We need to clean that. She is on oxygen. If the power goes out, I'm in trouble. And we moved up here from Florida in a very hurricane area. I have used my generator here in Alamance County more than I ever did in Florida because we've lost power, numerous times. We've had water issues with the pressure because of all the infrastructure that's coming in. I've bought more water. I've bought bigger generators in order to make sure that I can keep my daughter alive. And that's terrifying. We moved up here specifically from Florida because we wanted a better hospital. We moved from Durham because Durham was terrifying. We lived in a not so safe area. Alamance was safer, it was cheaper, it was cleaner. And I'm seeing that disappear between all the stuff that's coming in and now the possibility of an AI center. I don't want to have to move again in order to help keep my daughter alive. And, we've heard from therapists about the other impacts that can cause. We don't know what that will do to normal, healthy people, let alone children and adults and, seniors that are dependent on oxygen and electricity and stuff like that in order to maintain their way of living. So my thought process is if we can postpone to make sure we know what these data centers will do to our residents, what the impact is environmentally and stuff like that, and if all of our bills start going up, we're a single income family. I can't work. My daughter can't go to a specialized school or anything like that because she's also nonverbal and she has major issues with leaving her mom. So I've chosen to homeschool her. I can't go out and work if our bills go up because of that. That's another terrifying thing, not just for me, but for my husband as well as the sole provider of our family. So my hope is that you guys will consider the impacts of everything that a data center could bring in for children, for adults, and for special needs families, because some of us don't have anywhere else to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Fentress.
I'm Karen Fentress, and I own a business here in Burlington. And it's an insurance agency. And we run a dozen computers, and not one time in doing AI searches or algorithms or anything that we use have we ever gotten a message that said, oh, we need another data center to process, like you've reached your limit. We have plenty of data processing centers right now to do what we need to do, what all of us think that we need to do. We got to ask ourselves why. There's 1,500 data centers being built nationwide right now. We are the leader in the world of building these massive data centers. What is it that needs to be processed? But look around, facial recognition, flock cameras everywhere. Burlington has more flock cameras than Greensboro does. You can't go to the Tanger Center or the Coliseum and use cash anymore, right? Everything is digital. Everything is headed towards some kind of tracking. We're all being tracked. You can't buy a new car now, without putting in your profile. This is what the data centers are being developed for. This is creating our digital prison, basically. So I'm against them in general, and I think we need to push back. We need to know why they're building so many. North Carolina, we were fine with just a North Carolina driver's license. Now you have to have a real ID, right? Because they're going to centralize everything. Everything is going to go to some federal database. That is not what our country was built on. We're supposed to be a loose federation of states. Now they're centralizing everything. Your health records are going to be tied to your car. They're going to be tied to where you shop. They're going to be tied to what you can buy. This is a social credit system coming. We need to fight back, not just because of everything that's being extracted with the air and the water and all that. I agree with all that. The physical ramifications are insane. But these things are extracting our freedom. And if we don't push back in a big way, we're just handing over our individual financial freedoms.
Thank you. You want for Rick Stevens to read what he has?
There's two names that you skipped, Kelly
It
Harrer
is?
and Courtney Royster.
Who? Oh, I called you and I don't think you came. Yeah, I did call Kelly Hare. I'm sorry, come on down.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Hare. I live in Burlington. I'm here tonight to ask you to support our 2-year moratorium on new data centers in Alamance County. I first want to say I'm not against technology or economic development, but I am against making a permanent decision about our county before we have the information and regulations necessary to make that decision responsibly. Even tonight, we've heard a lot of conflicting information about the impacts of AI data centers on our community. My work at Elon University is tangentially related to looking at the impacts of AI data centers, and I should say that I'm here on my own behalf and not Elon University's. My colleagues and I have spent the last year doing research on the positive and negative impacts of AI data centers, and we certainly don't have all the answers. As someone who's not an AI expert but has been working hard to learn, I can say that Alamance County needs at least 2 years to figure this out. AI data centers are not ordinary developments. They can require enormous amounts of electricity, significant water resources, substantial land use. A 2-year moratorium is not a ban, but simply a pause. It gives this board time to answer important questions. How much water could a facility use? Where would that water come from? How much electricity would be required? And who pays for that infrastructure? What noise standards should apply? How far should these facilities be placed from homes? How do we protect our farmland, our communities, and our environment? It's a lot to think about. A 2-year moratorium gives county staff, commissioners, residents, farmers, utility providers, and potential developers time to work together on clear, reasonable standards. If after 2 years evidence shows that data centers can operate safely under strong regulations, then we can welcome that responsible development. But once a massive facility is built, we can't undo it. There's so much to learn about the rapidly changing landscape of AI data centers. This is an incredibly important decision that cannot and should not be rushed. Please support a 2-year moratorium, not because we are against progress, but because Alamance County deserves smart, responsible, and informed progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Royster? Oh, you should have put your hand up.
Good evening. I am Courtney Royster of Burlington.
candidate for county commissioner and a proud graduate of Cummings High School. I'm not going to belabor this anymore. What I'm going to ask for is a 2-year moratorium on the data center expansion. And just some thoughts, just some things for you all is to actually care about the people, protect the people, listen to the people. Some of the decisions y'all have made before haven't reflected that, so at least do something now. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want Rick Stevens to read the information on it? And you, Attorney Stevens, you have gone over and studied and have a piece of paper you can read on that?
I don't necessarily want to read the moratorium. I don't know that people want to hear me do that, but I'll talk about kind of what we did to draft this and what's important to have in the moratorium based on what the law requires. So the law requires that the board look at various ways to limit regulation that may include a moratorium. When I drafted this, I included the required statements in the statute about the problems, the conditions that necessitate the action, in this case the moratorium, and a statement on the development approvals subject to the moratorium. So what are the things the county does that we're going to limit in order to not allow data centers to be built for some duration of time. Then we put in some termination points and also some actions, like a schedule of actions the board has to actually hear about from county staff, what we're going to try to do to help draft regulations that would allow the county to limit data centers in general of certain sizes to certain places. So really that's what we've done. We've made sure to comply with the statutory framework. But like I told the board before, we're not here necessarily tonight to figure out how to fix the problem. We're here to decide whether we want to figure out how to fix the problem and buy ourselves some time to do that. I know that folks have said tonight, they've talked about different timelines. When I drafted this, I said that 6 months I thought was reasonable for the county to think about what would take place and what we'd need to do to adequately put safeguards in place. That's certainly open to the board's discretion as far as how long you think that moratorium should last. I just want to caution the board, however, that a moratorium is really just a deliberative study period for county staff to think about ways to either decide to regulate or how to regulate. It can't just be a pause just for the sake of a pause. So there's got to be some meaningful county action taking place during the moratorium. If a developer were to say that we think the county's just slow walking this on purpose by saying they want to have a moratorium for 2 or more years, but there's no action taking place, they can actually take the county to court and force us to rescind the moratorium. So I want to be careful not to just say, let's do it for a long period of time to buy ourselves way more time than we might actually need to figure out how to limit things in a reasonable way. So I've heard 2 years. I drafted 6 months. I certainly think 2 years is probably longer than necessary. But I'm happy to adjust the timelines that I've drafted in any way the board might see fit. I'm also happy to answer any questions.
And this is something that can be extended if at a year or 6 months or a year we say, hey, we don't have enough information on this, we can extend the moratorium, or if something happens and they really make a huge change, which who knows, then we could actually come back and bring it in and say, okay, it's been a year, and we do not want to extend the moratorium on it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the moratorium is designed to expire, again, as drafted at the end of a 6-month period. The board could decide to change that. You could also decide to accept that initial period and then come back and extend it based on the way the statute is worded. But again, like I said before, the statute's designed to buy us time to work on the problem, not just to say we're not going to do anything for some period of time. I think the idea of having an outright ban or having a moratorium period for a great number of years is probably legally tenuous.
Madam Chair, I got a
Yes.
question for Rick. If we were to do a 1-year moratorium, could we insert a 60-day trigger before the end of the moratorium to require us to review where we are and make a decision on whether or not that moratorium needed to be extended?
Yeah, that's kind of the way I've drafted it so far. The county has deadlines in place that we would have to take certain actions in studying and bringing things back to the board to consider. There's not a hard deadline at the end of the moratorium that I've drafted so far, but we could certainly we could certainly do that. But the way the moratorium is set up is it does expire at a definite time without some action by the board to extend it.
Well, I've spoken to another county commissioner outside of Alamance County, and one of the thoughts that was presented to me was setting up districts within the county, maybe like where the high schools are located, and bring in the people in those particular school districts and give them an opportunity to have direct input to us at various times on what they see, and for us also to share information we've gleaned at that point in time with our constituents.
I think as much public input as the board wants to hear is great. And I also want to make sure that we understand that we're going to be studying the different types of data centers. We can look at figuring out what types might be effective based on the way that we're organized and which types may not. So we have time to study the nuances of it to bring more definite things back to the board to consider.
Now, as I understand it too, we have the ability to structure an ordinance around data centers such that we can require things like, and this was popped up to my mind. I was talking to, several of us were on a tour this morning with Honda equipment over in Swepsonville. And they're bringing in regularly bring in the fire department to look at the facilities to be aware of what's going on. But they have 2 fire departments over there that are in close proximity to them. If we were to have a data center, which could be a real problem for a fire, can we require them to support and maintain a fire station at that level?
That's a good question. I don't have a definite answer. I'll just say I've been deliberately keeping myself kind of naive to some of those types of questions because I want to focus on making sure we adopt this moratorium effectively. But those are the kinds of questions that we can answer during that 1-year period or whatever the period of time is. So I'll have time to get you answers to those types of questions moving forward.
Well, we've heard a number of points of issue tonight, and all of those are on, I think, all of our list of things we want to be able to figure out how to deal with. I mean, we don't want to lose infrastructure. We don't want a negative impact on our citizens.
I've read extensively, and I've also asked other commissioners who have data centers and who are going to allow a data center and what I mean, some of them are really, really strict, the rules and regulations they have put on that. So I pretty much know the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, but I think we do need to put a moratorium on this. And I
Chair?
would accept,
Yeah, I question. I think the ordinance is very well written. You've covered all from A to Z. In particular, though, I'd like to know if we have any idea who's going to be doing the analysis, who's going to be studying, because I didn't see that in your draft, which I think is kind of an important thing. You know, who sees it for what it is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure that it's going to be entirely county staff, but if you look at Section 5, it's the work program. It's what we're going to do during the moratorium, what we're going to try to uncover. Gives some timelines for planning staff, especially, to be involved in determining what kind of regulations we're going to need, trying to identify the types of data centers and be able to classify those in a meaningful way. Again, planning staff, I think, is really going to be doing a lot of this lifting, the planning board, in some cases, our permitting staff and inspection staff as well. That's really the biggest hook for us right now is building permits. So making sure that we can effectively issue or not issue building permits as might be needed to build the data centers that we don't want in certain places.
I agree with those folks being involved. What I'd like to see are some outside information on a balanced basis. You know, pretty much everybody agrees there's some good and some and not good with the way things have been imposed with data centers across the country. Some are bad, some are horrible. I'd like to see some outside testimony.
Great. I think that's something we need to consider. Think about what needs to be studied. And probably if we're going to be involving contractors in that way, think about how much we're going to spend on that type of thing up front. So we need to have a budget for it. Right now we don't have a budget for this project. That's certainly something we need to think about in that moratorium period. We need to think about what we need to study, set a budget for it, set some benchmarks in terms of reporting out. And I think that makes sense.
And I also talked to a House of Representatives, and the House passed up to the Senate. I do not think it's passed the Senate yet. Some rules and regulations for data centers, and I think that would be good for us to also get that and see what they are saying the state of North Carolina is going to do.
Yeah, that's true. The state regulatory framework on this issue is changing. Honestly, the state regulatory framework related to everything we do as local governments is changing, and so that's something for us to think about as well.
I just want to remind everybody that in Chatham County, the big Vietnam VinFast company, electric vehicles, was going to come there. And the state, and Chatham County was going to invest $400 million in economic development agreement between the county and them. Well, they've gone bankrupt, and Jeff Jackson, who's a killer attorney general, is suing them because of the millions of dollars that Chatham was going to invest in, plus the state of North Carolina incentives. But just to let you know, they had an 1,800 acre site to do it. And if you've ever looked this up online, it looks like a giant field that's getting ready to be plowed because it's skint land and nothing's there. And this started out, and just know this, that Mary Oaks Baptist Church, which stood on the border between Moncure and New Hill on the corner of US 1 and New Elam Church Road since 1888, was met with a wrecking ball in June of 2025 to make way for the highway. The church, along with 27 homes and 5 businesses, had to forfeit its land under eminent domain to make a way for the North Carolina Department of Transportation Highway Plan. So all this great, it's just gonna be great, rainbows are gonna fall out of the sky, and it's gonna be all this stuff. It always starts out that way. And I'm just gonna show you what data centers are gonna be for y'all if you don't be careful with this group. This is so tacky, but this is called a carrot. And they will dangle these in front of your face to get you to believe what they want. We're gonna have to be really careful, because since I've been on this board, 2020, we got elected, I've been pushing zoning, and it gets sent back to the planning board. And it comes back to us and gets sent back to the planning board. We got to do zoning better so we can do this right, because they're going to coincide together. So I'm just saying, we cannot, I don't think, less than a year, because like Ed's wanting to know who's going to be doing this, maybe we are not the people to do this, because the lady that stood up that's got a farm, I think she's gone. She was so precious, and she was talking about her animals and stuff. She said, I don't know about data centers, but I know about my land and my water, and I know about the people in this county, and I care about them, and I know we all do here. So I want smart people doing whatever it is we need to do, a lot smarter than me. My dad always said, hang around people much smarter than you are so you can learn from them, and I do that every time I'm on this board. So I'm just telling you, we can't play around with this. I pushed this because I thought, Lord, just give me to 5 o'clock today, so no surprise data center applies for a permit. Because I've watched Morrow Mill people be devastated, other places be devastated. We don't know devastation until something like this comes to this county, and we are not this kind of county, just my opinion. And so don't forget, they will play you, and we are not going to be played. And this non-disclosure mess, I can put my life on the line, or theirs. None of us is going to ever do that to this county. I don't think these people are capable of doing something like that. So,
One of us are.
I know Kelly, I know Steve's in my Sunday school class. I'm just saying, I'll tell the preacher. But we'll be okay on that, but we can't screw this up. We just cannot screw this up. This is big time, and I look at all the map of the United States, and it's like mid-America all the way over here, and it looks like data centers are having babies. I'm thinking, that lady that talked about data, what is it, ma'am? We don't need any more data. Where is she? She's got great brown hair. I saw her. Okay, she talked about it. Like, why the heck all of a sudden do we need to know all this and such much more? Because it's just really scary to people. It's like, who is playing with our minds on this stuff? So I'm just saying, y'all, if I get arrested tonight, somebody go my bond, because I'm not going to let this county be played like this. If I have to be out there with a poster, we're gonna be better than this. And if that's what they want, go for it. But I don't want us, this county is so precious, and we gotta be really careful to keep it that way. Because if we wanted to be Greensboro, we would be. And God bless Greensboro. We go to Greensboro, but we are this county.
Commissioner Powell, you have anything, comments to make?
You need to borrow this.
No, I've been to a lot of public hearings. This is the only one that I can remember where all the comments were in one direction.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we're all of I think, a similar mind. And not only, you know, is it this group here tonight, but people all over the country are doing the same thing. When I got up this morning, I was watching TV, and they were talking about Greensboro also doing a moratorium. It's not just Alamance County. And, you know, on the surface, it seems like bringing in a data center is a wonderful opportunity for a county. They pay taxes, a lot of taxes, and they don't use our services. So if you're talking about balanced growth, where you can balance, you know, tax-paying entities against the cost of maintaining residences, it sounds like a really great opportunity, but something's not right. And, you know, until we can figure out what needs to be done to protect ourselves against ending up with something that's not right, then I think we need to do that. And for that, I agree with a moratorium.
And I also agree with the moratorium. We've all talked about it. We actually asked Attorney Stevens to research, look it up, and to give his opinion on it. And also, everything you do, and a lot of people don't realize this, it has to be very legal, and you have to put the wording exactly correct, or they take you to court and they win the case. And so that's why sometimes it looks like we're moving slowly, but we are moving to make the right decisions, but also to be able to stand behind our decision and not have it turned over by a court of law. Commissioner Carter?
Well, I agree. Moratorium's the right thing to do. I think a one-year moratorium with a trigger for, at a 60-day from termination point to make sure it's the right, whether we want to continue it or whether we've reached a point where we've got all the data we need and we're ready to make a decision on whether or not to allow it or not. When you go back to the issue too of zoning, and we look at, our concern has been to try and come up with, we have a UDO and a HIDO. I don't know if anybody knows what that means. UDO is a Uniform Development Ordinance, and a HIDO is a Heavy Industry Development Ordinance. Those don't have the teeth in them we'd like. None of us are happy with them, I don't believe. There's some questions about what we can and can't do because of some restrictions on what the county can do as far as the term down zoning is concerned. So when somebody says we've already decided we're not gonna vote for it, or we're gonna vote for something after the election, we're not even sure we can vote for it. So zoning, talking about zoning now. But if we can get some teeth in our HIDO and our UDO and some consequences that we can when somebody doesn't do what they say they're gonna do, there's gonna be some serious consequences to the person who's caused the problem. That's what we want to, where we want to get, I think, and we want to take care of our citizens. The Uniform Development Ordinance, we need to look at some things like lot sizes. Keep these postage stamp lots from popping up all over the rural parts of the county and sucking up water. So we've got to do some more. We've got to do some more to help our citizens out. And we're working on that with the planning department. So it takes a while, but it's not, I don't think that's going to take that long. We've already got some stuff to look at.
Commissioner Priola?
Well, I'm on board for a one-year moratorium for all the right reasons. I think Mr. Stephen has put it together very well, due diligence, and study the problem. Not make the assumptions that are often made, but to figure out exactly what is right for Alamance County, with the due diligence, then put together some rational regulation. And the third point and final point on this is I absolutely agree that this needs to be done in the open. Non-disclosure agreements I've never liked, and they should be not part of government on the whole.
Well, none of us have ever done that.
Yeah, right. So, but keeping everything up and above board and as many open sessions with the folks as possible. The school sessions are a good idea. So I'd like to move the question if we can do that.
Okay. I need a motion, if everyone's of the right mind, for us to go ahead and pass the moratorium.
Would you like me to make the motion, the one I just described?
Let me,
You wanna let,
one-year
you wanna let
moratorium?
Rick read it, and then we'll,
Well, let me just throw out this. If you look at section 5, which again is the work program, I had various dates and times for county action to occur. I've extended each of those, I've doubled each of those periods of time. So under section 1 from 60 days to 120 days, under section 2 from 90 days to 180 days, section 3 from 120 to 240 days. And then I've added one paragraph at the end that says, at least 30 days before expiration of the moratorium, the county shall consider whether to adopt any recommended amendments to its development regulations and/or whether to extend this moratorium for an appropriate period of time. And for the moratorium itself to expire 1 year from today. So with those changes, is the board?
I think we need to go to 60. 30 days only gives us 2 meeting periods. And we're looking at a 1-year moratorium is gonna put us at August of next year, where we would be going through the summer once again. We have a meeting problem usually in July. So I don't wanna restrict us down, cut us down too tight.
Well,
final period of time for consideration.
respectfully, I said at least 30 days.
At least, okay.
So I think that gives us some flexibility, but I also don't want to cut off too much of our moratorium, because what we're saying is effectively we want to do something 30 days before it ends. If we do something 60 days before it ends, then we really only have 10 months to do things.
right,
So I'm trying to not bind us too much. Does that make sense?
yes.
So with the changes that I just read, that's what I have in the current draft, if you want to make a motion on that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion on that.
I'll second.
No, go ahead.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, now, we need the sheriff. We need the sheriff to come up here to the podium, and if you'll just give us a brief statement on these, and if they are non-matching on the 2 grants that you have asked for.
Been quite a night, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
I'm here tonight to get the permission of the commissioners to apply for 2 separate grants. Now you say, well, what are these grants for? Let me just touch on some things that will let you know why. First of all, our detention center is full and people sleeping on the floor. Second of all, we are 31 more people short in the Alamance County Sheriff's Office to try to do the job that the people are asking us to do. There was talk about body cameras. We got our body cameras, but guess what? You got to have digital storage for those. And apparently, all over the nation, this is happening. And that's why the Department of Justice under Trump administration put out a $3 billion for a grant for local law enforcement. And we're asking to be able to apply for the first grant, $5.2 million for Alamance County. You say, what is this going on as far as the finances? Workforce stabilization and retention sign-on bonuses for 26 positions, which would be $260,000. Retention bonuses for 291 employees would be $1.4 million, with 5,000 full-time employees, sworn, detention, and civilian getting a bonus, and $2,500 for our part-time employees. And you say, well, Sheriff, that's a lot of money for these employees. Well, I got news for you. Because we are so short of people, we're losing more people leaving to go somewhere else because of working them half to death all the time and putting them in dangerous situations in our detention center and out on the highway. We also asked for jail annex infrastructure improvement, roof replacement, $75,000. You say, well, what do you mean improvements for the jail annex? Well, let me tell you something, folks. If we don't do something to get those people off the floor in Alamance County, you and I are going to be sued because that's inhumane. Roof replacement, $75,000. The HAVAC system replacement, $45,000. Perimeter security fencing, need to raise the fence, $340,000. Access control door system replacement, which is this jail and down there, is $1,154,955. Central camera system upgrade, $500,000. This is money that the taxpayers in Alamance County will not have to provide for us to get these things. The storage for our body cameras. There were a lot of things said about, when you going to get body cameras, when you going to get body cameras. We'd asked for them 3 years in a row. We finally got them. Guess what? Right now, we technically do not have the storage for the number of body camera footage that we have. For instance, approximately 700 body camera stuff for the, like
Videos.
when I'm arresting you or whatever, 700 a day, 5,000 a week of camera footage that has to be kept for court purposes, investigations on our employees that, somebody may file a complaint on. And we don't have it. The county does not have that storage. We have a chance here to get that storage for our digital cameras. I'm asking you to be able to apply for this grant. We also are asking for a $400,000 grant to apply from the Governor's Crime Control Public Safety. And what is that for? Our whole system here in the county, as far as digital storage, is running out and getting worn out, and we're going to have to replace that. We have an opportunity here to be able to take these two grants and save our taxpayers tons of money, because guess what? We're going to have to do something in the next year, or the next year at least, to be able to adequately deal with the situation that we at the Sheriff's Office finds ourselves in. I'm asking you, Commissioners, tonight, to give me permission to proceed with these grants, because they're waiting in Washington, D.C. for me to get y'all's approval. That's why we're before you tonight.
The question probably ought to be directed more to Ms. Thompson, who wanted this to be taken off the consent agenda. What's the catch? What's the problem with what you're asking for? I don't see a hitch here.
I don't either.
Okay, there isn't a problem, but I'm going to tell you the reason I have concern for this. As I was told when we were looking at body cameras that we had about a year of storage left, whatever. That was what we were told. The money you're looking at, the $400,000 to redo some of the technologies you have, I totally understand that. I really do. But you're talking about that annex. And I met you at that annex last year.
Ma'am, you did.
I spoke with Washington, D.C. in August when I was at the Crimes Against Children conference. And I wanted to know about $797,000 and $499. And this is what you wanted the ICE program to pay for, to remodel the annex.
That's right.
And you were going to take Alamance County inmates and put them over there, low misdemeanor inmates. I have witnesses, we were all over, wait a minute, let me finish first and you can have the floor. And you were gonna spend this ICE money on that jail annex, but you were gonna put your low misdemeanor Alamance County inmates over there, not your ICE inmates. That's not right. That's not how I do it. You're needing this kind of money for a roof repair when you needed $226 back then. Water heater, $2,000. Exterior painting, $6,000. Security door locks, $110,000. HVAC assessment, $152,800. And the fence replacement at $300,000. All of a sudden, you need a higher fence with more razor wire. I'm just asking you questions, Sheriff, because I've done interviews in that place, and when I was working for my husband, I've done that. I've done them over at your jail. And it just seems to never end. And I know you have people on the floor because you finally got that block where your ICE inmates were open. You got rid of that, and then you've got more people in there. It's constant. You had some situation this weekend, and one last week with some people getting hurt and stuff. That's a jail, I understand that. But my concern is you're looking at more raises and bonuses for people. This county has given you $300,000 and $10,000 sign-on bonuses. That's 30, plus 80-something whenever you had your drug conversation. That's 38 people, and you're still short. Where are all your people going?
To other places for money and having to work overtime. Just like if you were having to work overtime, getting called back in when you and your family was supposed to be something, let me tell you, you wouldn't be around here long, Miss Thompson.
I understand that, Sheriff, but you keep getting these additional people, and you keep saying you're short.
We are short.
And people keep leaving. That's my question. And we've given you bonuses.
Why?
You got pay raises.
You stop the bonuses now.
Because you keep coming back. They got raises whenever COVID was going on. There's just been raise after raise. Your detention officers, some of the highest paid detention officers in the state.
You need to check around on that, Miss
I have
Thompson.
checked around.
Well, who's making more than us?
I look at some of the sheriffs I talked with, and I was on the Governor's Crime Commission. They say, man, a $10,000 bonus, you was up there at the
Ms.
top.
Thompson, all I am trying to do is run a sheriff's office and save our taxpayers money. And I will say this, we are working very hard. Our people are working very, very hard, Ms. Thompson. And I'm sorry that you feel this way, but I have an office to run. And I also know that the commissioners didn't have money in this budget to do some of the things that need to be done.
Well, why didn't you apply for a grant for body cameras when everybody else does?
Because it was matching money and y'all would not match it.
But we just spent much money to get you body cameras because they are that important to the safety of your officers.
Do you remember, you voted 2 times against giving us the money for body cameras. It's on the record.
You told us that you pulled out because you needed guns. That's what I was told.
Well,
and you got
didn't hear
guns
that
from the ICE
me.
program. I got all the emails. I got all the proof of you getting guns from your ICE program, which you've got to have.
But Ms. Thompson, you must understand, this is not like running a business at a grocery store. We have to have equipment. We have to have technology.
I agree.
Technology is growing, and let me tell you something. It is not cheap.
Nothing's cheap, but lives aren't
you're
either.
right on that.
That's why I wanted those body cameras
Can I
on you.
get back to my original question?
No, because I'm talking.
Well, you sure are talking a whole lot.
Well,
Can
you're
we have a
checking the
discussion?
audience a while ago. Let me speak to my sheriff. I want him safe.
I had a
the officers
question
safe.
that you're avoiding.
Go ahead, Ed. You be careful, Ed. Be
Yeah,
careful.
Yeah, thanks for the warning.
We will bring it.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I got it. Thanks for the warning. I asked the sheriff, where's the catch here, and said we're litigating all the things downstream in the past. What's the problem with this grant that we have a problem now that we can't say, yeah, go ahead and apply for the money?
Absolutely nothing. They're waiting for us to say, here, our commissioners have approved it. Our stuff's already in Washington, D.C.
That's why it was on the
Congressman
consent agenda.
Hudson's trying to help us.
What does it cost us? Where's the controversy? If the federal government comes up with the money, we have more money for your program.
Exactly.
It's not matching.
No, there is no match.
Right.
Well, there wasn't a
And there's
maximum.
no, let me say this. This is not a type of continuation of grant either where the county will have to come back in and fund anything. This is things that Alamance County has needed before I become sheriff as far as our detention centers and stuff. We knew Alamance County is a growing county. People are moving here from everywhere. And some of the people that are moving here is the type of people we don't want here because they're criminal elements. And we are responsible. The sheriff of Alamance County is responsible by law for running that detention center. And I am trying to be as nice as I can to try to keep our inmates safe and try to provide for them. And sleeping on the floor, if I was an inmate sleeping on the floor, I'd be pretty ill, and I'd be giving the staff one heck of a time. And that's exactly what's happening here.
Madam Chair.
One last question, is Michael Graves part of this grant?
Do what now?
Is Michael Graves?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we
because we
approve.
met about his program.
Right, no,
Remember?
that ain't part of the grant.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 6H and item 6I.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm not going to oppose it. I just have questions for you.
I know.
Motion passes. You can go for the grants.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
No hard feelings.
None.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you for all you do.
I would like to
Yeah,
amend.
thank you
sir.
so much.
I would like to amend my motion.
Okay.
The sheriff has suggested that a letter signed by the commissioners might encourage the grant operators to be more expeditious on approving the grant, and that we craft a letter such as that and each one of us sign it.
Okay. Attorney Stevens, can you take care of that for us?
I'll be happy to draft it. I'd suggest that rather than amending the motion, I'll just add that to the next meeting agenda and you can consider it and vote on it then.
Okay.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Well, I think he's gonna send the grant request off. I think you're
Yes,
prepared on
the
that.
grant's already there. The way they're waiting for the commissioners. Congressman Hudson has. That's what I said, it's a deadline. That's why we were here tonight.
Yeah, there's a deadline on the grant.
I don't know. Can you draft us a letter and all of us sign it, or?
Well, if that slows things down, let's not do that then. I'll leave that up to the sheriff. If he wants it, fine.
You do? Okay, great.
Beg pardon?
Okay. I'll defer to the sheriff's staff. They know this.
Okay. All right. So, now we have county
Thank you.
attorney. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Now we have county attorney. Does anyone have anything, do you have anything to say, Attorney Stevens?
Nothing more from me tonight. Thank you, ma'am.
Don't take us into closed session.
If I can get that out.
No closed session.
County managers report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, and we've already had the commissioner's comments, but does anybody else have anything to say before we adjourn?
I'd just like to thank all of the fire departments, volunteer and City Graham, for the fire they put out at my dad's former warehouse at Eli Whitney. They were absolutely amazing. They were on the news.
All right, I'll
Motion
accept
to
it.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Don't have to ask me twice.